Well, today I'm excited to welcome one of Utah's most influential business leaders, Andrew Smith, to the podcast. Andrew has been a driving force in the economy for years and is a seasoned entrepreneur with an impressive track record. Honestly, it's kind of crazy. I could go forever on this, but I'll try and just simplify it a little bit. But he's taken a company public, successfully exited two others, and has done billions in sales along the way. He's raised hundreds of millions of dollars for his companies and funds while creating thousands of jobs that have made a significant impact on the community. And so like anyone here watching and that will be watching this, like if you want to learn business on like the highest level and learn leadership on the highest level, like this is the podcast to listen to today. And as always, the Life Legacy podcast, we just want to inspire you guys to upgrade the quality of your life and help you feel seen. And it's really interesting because you know people, I consider you a very high rank human, not just financially, but in like all aspects of like a well-rounded human, which is really
I
hard
hope
to
so.
find.
I hope I stay that way. I feel like I am pretty well rounded in the way I look at things,
Yeah.
but I hope I always stay that way. You never know how the world shapes a human, and it surprises me sometimes. But for
Mm.
me, it's very clear in my mind what I'm here for, what I'm doing, why I'm having the success I've had, and what my purpose is really long term.
Well, I think I would love to start there. Like what is it that drives you, and like what's your definitive purposes that you feel like are important to you?
Yeah, I think that early in my career, so I was an entrepreneur back in 1999. I mean, early days tech. This was before the dot-com bubble in 2001. And I built this business that I was really proud of. It was streaming media, Jackson. So that shows, it dates me a little bit. It gives me a little bit of an understanding why I have some grays here. But streaming media, and we had this incredible business. And at the time, I think that people should understand that it's not abnormal to feel like this angst about being a success, right? We all feel that way. When we're younger, it's I got to go conquer the world. I got to go make my mark. I got to make a bunch of money. I want to have a nice car and a nice home, and I want to have the beautiful wife or spouse or whatever. It's normal, right? We're human. We're the natural man is in all of us. We all want that, and we look around us a lot, side to side, to see what other people have done and go, "Ooh, I want to do that," or they're going ahead of me. I want to speed up. I was the same way in my 20s. I was that way, Jackson.
Mm.
I wanted it all. I wanted to conquer the world. I think I was a little bit more intense. I think I was a little more impatient, and I think I had my priorities wrong. Did I have some success early in my career? Yes. Was it easy? No. It was very hard. In fact, we went through the dot-com bubble before we actually ultimately sold to a public company, and then I was a public company. But it was hard. It was very hard. But I had success when I was younger, and a lot of people don't have that ability to have success early on. And then in my next business, I was the same way. I was a little intense. I was a little bit more, temperamental and short-wicked, and I thought that that's how you would lead people. And I don't know. I think that I got into my 30s and my 40s, and I just thought, that there's a better way to do this because I've been blessed with some abilities and some skills that I need to harness because the Lord gave me those skills. So I got to do something good with it.
Mm.
And I realized that is just not the way I want to be perceived or known. So I really calmed down, and then I thought, I need to have a different purpose than money. Because what I realized too is money is pretty anticlimactic. Like you push so hard for it. And then when you get it, you're kind of like, okay, now
Now
what?
what?
Yeah. You said it at the exact same time, like, now what? And I didn't realize that how anticlimactic it was. And so I'm like, I got to have a different purpose than money. Money is fine to have as a purpose. It can't be the purpose, right?
Yeah, I think it should be a driver at some point. It's a
Absolutely.
great metric to see how well you're doing in your progression,
Sure it is.
specifically in a business.
And in a business, you have to have profits and you have to have money to operate, right? Like money is a component, but I think for your driving force, I felt years ago, so like in my early 30s, I have to have a different driving force than money because it's pretty hollow.
Mm.
And I changed it to I want to create businesses and brands where I can generate as many jobs as I can, generate as many high paying jobs as I can, and change people's lives for the better and give them a really good, wholesome work environment, the best I can.
Mm.
And so that's been my drive the last 15 years, 18 years. And yeah, we've employed 50,000 plus people. We've created a great amount of jobs. We've changed communities with what we were doing. And my passion and my drive right now is just creating opportunity. It's not the money side of it. Money comes fairly natural now if I focus on something other than money.
Mm, that's interesting. And so the big priority shifts, it sounds like initially it was all about the
Sure it
money
was.
and like possibly stature and those types of things, and
Sure.
then now it's creating opportunity, which it sounds like you've been a producer since like as far
Yeah,
as
young age.
yeah. And so with that, like I think it is normal for a lot of people to have that hunger for the success, but the amount of people that achieve it is a
Very few.
is a different
It's a different
conversation,
story.
right?
Yeah. And again, like I said too, Jackson, I don't think it's wrong to feel that way because I think
Yeah.
it's natural.
Mm.
I think for all of us, we have to fight it though. I've said this story before. If I stand in front of, I've gone to BYU and UVU and I've talked to entrepreneurship classes before. And, I know what they're thinking in their mind because I've sat in those classes before too when I was younger. And the thoughts in their minds are, man, what do I have to do to get to where he is or she is, whoever they're listening to? And how can I get there faster? And what does it feel like to be wealthy or have millions of dollars or get a big check or whatever? So since I know they're thinking that, I always tell the story of, I remember, when I was younger, Jackson, I grew up in Chicago. I'm born and raised in Chicago. And I had on my wall the posters of cars. The kids don't do posters anymore, I don't think, but I had the posters of, exotic cars on the wall, right? And I remember there was this red Ferrari that I remember wanting so bad, Jackson. And like, oh, what would that be like to own it? And I was just so excited about it. And you're always kind of thinking and dreaming and wishing for it. And I remember I got my first check that I was like, oh, I can actually afford one now. And I remember going and specking it out and buying it. And I remember driving down the road the first day I got it. I'm like, I have arrived. Got my red Ferrari. I'm driving it. It's just amazing. It purrs. It's
How old are you, by the way?
26.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like I've arrived. The next day I was like, oh, I'm going to go out and get my Ferrari. A week later, I was like, I'm going to go get in the Ferrari. And a month later, I'm like, it's just a car.
Yeah.
It was so disappointing to me to see how fast that wore off.
Mm.
But yet for years and years and years, Jackson, I can remember thinking, how cool would it be to accomplish that goal? Then you get it, and I realized how anticlimactic it is. Now, do I have cars like that now, and do I enjoy them? Of course, but I enjoy the ingenuity of them and the style and the history of them more than the status of them, right?
Mm.
And it's just a car, right? So I tell kids all the time, don't speed through that journey, because when you actually hit your goal, it's pretty anticlimactic. And I know that it sounds easier to say that now that I've hit some of those goals in my life. And I would say it's probably true. It is a little easier for me to say it now, but just be careful pushing too hard for it, because once you get it, it's pretty anticlimactic.
Yeah. In our conversations, I've noticed that you are really great at either keeping things really light and fun, or you can like go deep to like help a situation. And I'm just curious, like how can more people enjoy the journey? Because I think that's a very normal issue that everyone's going through, is like outcomes, 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 and then you hit the outcomes and it's the now what question, and
Yep.
then people have midlife crises.
Yeah. Midlife, end of life, beginning of life. I mean, I've seen people make money, a lot of money during their career and have success. And I would say people think that success is always just like this amount of money, right? This gigantic pile of cash. And some people are fine with a smaller outcome of cash, but a change in their life, right? Like, I'm not so involved in the business now, I can take a little bit of a step back, and that could be a really good thing for them. And it's not necessarily just about money. But I would say that I've met more people in the last 10 years, as I am now in my 50th year. I've met a lot of people in the last 10 years that sold their businesses in their 30s and 40s, and they literally are bored. They're bored. They don't know what to do with their life. They're kind of losing perspective. They're using their money for, stuff, and that's okay. But it's boring to them. And so I see that and I go, if you were blessed with the ability and you have the resources, do something with it. And if you can do something with it, you'll have more fulfillment in life, and you'll be more grounded if you stay active. And so for me, it doesn't matter how much money I have made or what I have or if I could be done now or not. I don't feel anything different than I have the obligation that I've been given from a higher power to continue to work to give back.
Yeah. And like listening and understanding your story, um, and this is more your story, but every time Andrew has sold a company, within like
A day or two.
a day or two, he is on to his next
The next one.
thing, which is why that's
It's
wild.
wild. Yeah, people say, "Are you ever going to stop?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm so tired, but I don't feel like I feel like I'm not supposed to stop.
Yeah.
I feel a very strong sense of
Mm.
you have the energy, you have the health, you have the strength, keep going. So I'm
Yeah.
going to keep going.
So tell me then, like for you, what does fulfillment look like?
Yeah, fulfillment for me is having balance in life. And when people say, "Well, how do you do work-life balance?" I don't ever look at them as separate. I look at them as one. There's always been this thing where it's like you have work and life, and they conflict, and how
Yeah.
do you balance them out? They're on teeter totters, and I always tell people, it's not this balancing act, and it's not making them work in harmony. It is just make them one. Make it just about life.
Mm.
And what I say by that is have your family be part of what you're doing. Talk openly with your spouse about what you're doing, and include them in the decision-making process of business or decisions that you make, like you do when you buy a car or buy a house or something. Everything should be one. And then there's harmony already because it's just called life. And so for me, I look at not only keeping balance in my life and also in business, but being driven by keeping that harmony and then showing other people how to do it is really what drives me. I want to show other people you can enjoy work and life. It can work in harmony, and just to enjoy the journey. The journey for me right now with everybody, whether it's all of my founders and the different portfolio companies we invest in, or other entrepreneurs that I know, that I counsel with, that I talk to, that I try to support just in the shadows. I don't love having the limelight on me, like, oh, Andrew's behind this company or Andrew's invested in this company. Like some people do that. I'm like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I just like to help in the shadows, help people understand how to enjoy each step, to win along the way, and to celebrate those wins is very important.
Mm.
And it can be the most minute things that you celebrate along the way so that you do enjoy the journey. But to realize when you get to this point and it's the end and you have an outcome, post that, you have to have yourself figured out now what you're going to do next. Because if not, you're going to be really wildly disappointed with how quiet and hollow it feels.
Mm.
So I try to help people understand that. And that's how I help people understand that the journey is probably more important than the outcome.
Yeah. Um, with entrepreneurs and people listening, I imagine that there's some systems and processes that you've kind of dialed and figured out that has been beneficial to almost all companies. Could you like enlighten us a little bit on some of those that have?
Yeah, for me personally, I'll start with you have to have a great partner
Mm.
in your spouse, your loved one, your partner, your plus one. You got to have a great partner. And when I say a great partner, one that is evenly yoked with you as to what you're trying to accomplish, supportive, and that you're supportive back, right? They don't have to be your business partner, but they are your business partner in life. If you're in business and you have a spouse, they're your business partner. Whether you think it that way or not, they are. Because what happens when you have a bad day, Jackson? You go home and you vent to your spouse, right?
Yeah.
So are they not in your business or not? Like they are part of the business. They know everything that's going on because that's your confidant. That's who you go to. So in my mind, first and foremost, you got to have a great spouse. And I have the best spouse. Sorry to everybody's listening. I have the best one. She's my partner and she's our CEO. We've worked together for 16 years. How many people can do that, right? So we respect each other and we have a great partnership because we're evenly yoked in what we're doing. So that's number one. Number two, you have to have the higher power involved in all you're doing. So we're very much so involved in not only our religion, but we're involved in building our relationship with our Heavenly Father. And we feel like everything that we do, we're including Him in it, and we're asking for His help to guide us. We feel like He's guided us many times, and there's other times we feel like He's saying nothing, so we have to learn, and we're going to make decisions with the best knowledge that we have. And sometimes that's the right decision, and other times it's not, where we have success or don't. But at the end of the day, we include Him in everything that we do. So those are the two things personally that we do. Is that we are good partners to each other, and so whether your spouse is involved or not, change your mindset that they are involved, and then include your higher power. Is definitely what I would do. When you're in business, though, or in just partnerships, or in a company that you work for, what we say to all of our portfolio companies, brands I've been involved with, people I've invested into is you have to have a sense of trust with everybody that's around the table. So in your company, you have to have trust. And I think that when people say, well, yeah, I trust that person, it's like, well, do you really? I mean, trust is all encompassing. You have to trust everything about it. So I say when you go into a relationship, trust the person wholeheartedly, 100%. Don't earn it over time. Don't build it over time. Just give it. If
Mm.
everybody gives each other 100% trust, you're going to have a better company. You're going to have better success because there's not going to be all these barriers that you have to punch through with each other. So just trust each other entirely. Until a person does something that you would say, well, that's not very trustworthy,
Pull
then
it
you don't have to
back a
pull it
little
back,
bit.
right? And I would pull it back with people who are like, well, that didn't have integrity what that person just did. So I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. I'm going to pull back a little bit of my trust. But so many people think that it's like, well, Jackson, you need to build your trust with me. And it's like, no, we're partners. We should just trust, unless I should not. And I think that the way that you keep trust going, build trust where it starts, where it's I trust you entirely, is mutual respect. So just respect each other. I respect your opinion, Jackson. Tell me everything you're thinking. You should respect mine. And everybody knows this, but best idea wins. In a business, in a partnership, in a relationship, does not matter who says it. Best idea wins all the time. For me, I don't care who tells me. I'm like, that is a good idea. We're doing that. Way better than my idea. And I'll say that vocally so people know I don't care about being right. It's about what the best idea is
For the company, for
for
the
the company,
for the
for
greater
the
good.
health of the
Yep.
business, right? And then if you ask my two boys growing up, Jackson, this is my last thing, is if you ask them, it's like, well, what does your dad always say? They would be like, oh, man, and my dad always says to us nonstop, the positivity breeds success. And it's just a statement I've lived by my whole life. If anybody has met me, knows me, has worked with me, they know I am always this way. I'm positive. Whether it's really bad news, great news, okay news, if it's just a normal day or an amazing day, I'm the same. And I believe it's because if you're positive, people want to work with you, businesses want to work with you, employees are happier if you're happy, if you're the leader, or if you're just a coworker. People want to be around people that are positive. They want to lean toward the light. It's the heliotropic effect. I don't know if you know what the heliotropic effect is, but if you put a plant in a dark room and there's a window with sunlight, where does the plant grow? It grows towards the sunlight, right? It's because that's a positive source. And so to have the heliotropic effect as a leader, as a human, as a father, as a mother, you want to have that. So I believe that positivity breeds success.
That's some great insights. I think that's awesome. And let's start with your spouse. What's your story with her?
So it's funny. We were, so I'm from Chicago. She's from Alabama. So she's
Mm.
Southern Belle and I'm the city slicker. How that works together is perfect because it actually does. But I was actually out here going to school. We were in here BYU land and had got back from a mission. I went to the Dominican Republic. And I was on a date with a girlfriend. I was dating her for a few months. She was falling in love. I thought I was falling in love and went on a double date with one of my ex companions. And he was on a date with Shauna, my wife. And I remember sitting there going, dang it, why is she with him? She should be with me. And she thought the same thing. I didn't know that. And what it will tell you a lot about who Shauna is and how she's been my entire married life to her. But she one night thought, you know what, I'm going to just get all the courage I have mustered up and I'm going to call over to Andrew's apartment and ask him out. So Shauna actually
Wow.
called my apartment and I picked up and she goes, this is Shauna. I'm like, how you doing, Shauna? She was living in the same complex as me at the time. And she said, I was just calling to find out when you're going to ask me out. And I was like,
Oh,
right now. So I went on a date with her that night and we talked for hours and hours. And a week later, I broke up with my other girlfriend and we got married. So
how long did it take for you guys to get married?
we were married probably 9, 10 months after we had met, but it was a pretty sure thing after about 4 weeks. Like,
Wow.
yeah, like it was meant to be. Shauna knew what she wanted. I was very impressed with that. And I was impressed with her. And I mean, anybody knows Shauna, they know you don't get in her way because when she's determined and has courage to do something, she'll do it. And
It's happening.
it's happening. And you know what? She has the same insecurities and reservations as any human, any woman, any man. But she always tells the younger generation, she says, you say yes to everything, meaning you go try things, say yes to dates, you say yes to meetings, you say yes to go learn things because I've done that. And you also muster up the courage when you know it's the right thing to do because you don't know how it's going to turn out. So she always tells people that because of our story.
Dang. Uh, what's an example of a moment that was like a hard time in your career, that she was kind of your rock?
Boy, I just got chills when you said that, to be honest, because there were times, there were some dark times. I always say, and those of you that are listening on the podcast and don't see the video side of it, but I always say, if you look at a screen and you can imagine a screen, everybody goes in and pitches money, and it's just always this like ramp up like this. It's like a hockey stick. That's what they'll call it. It's up and to the right. Everything's up and
Yeah.
to the right. And if most people, and I think that people do, even my boys have, they say, well, Dad, you look at your career, it's just been up and to the right, right? You just had success after success, and it's just up here, and you've made all this money, and your career's been perfect. And I sit there and think about it. I'm like, holy crap, man, this has not been perfect. Because if you zoom up, like, really
Yeah.
close to that line, there were years and moments in those years that it was like big drop, nice hike, big drop, nice hike. But over the last 27 years, yeah, it's been up and to the
going up.
right. Yeah. So when you say, what are some moments? Oh my gosh, it's too many to even number. But I would say the first one where I really saw the power and the strength of a good relationship and a powerful spousal relationship is during the dot-com bubble. We had this great business. We had Fortune 50 clients. We had a great tech. We had great employees, great culture. It was amazing. And I remember the market popping right in the middle of us trying to do a big transaction for the business. And I just felt like my whole life had blown up. Like I was going to be a nothing. My business was going to go out of business, and
The
the
Ferrari was
market,
going to get
the Ferrari was
towed.
going to be towed. Yeah, yeah. But I just remember that time. And I think that every man that says that they don't shed tears if you're an entrepreneur is a liar, because we all do. And I just remember dark, dark times and dark nights, tears running down my face. What do I do? How do I even go forward? Like, what do I go tell my team? I'm going to look like a failure, and everybody's going to think I'm a failure. Nobody will ever invest in me again. And Shauna would always just say, this is going to work itself out. Let's focus on what we can control. And she would make all this emotion I had just drill down to the things that were the most important. Like, let's focus on just this right now, or let's focus on what we can control, which she always says, like, let's just focus on what we can control. So she always has a way of bringing things down to earth for me, of the simplicity of things, and then knowing that I'm not alone, right? Like, it's okay. Like, if all of this fails tomorrow, you know that we still have each other, right? That can't take that away. And I'm always like, gosh, I didn't even think of that. Like, you feel like when you're in the dark times, like your whole life's going to be taken away from you. No, it's just business. It's just money. It's just stupid material crap. My relationship with her was what I really have valued over my entire business career and lifetime, to being what I really care about. Everything else is just colored bubbles in my mind, right? So she really helped me through that time. She helped me through the 2008 crash. Boy, that was a tough one. Everything is going great, and then the whole market crashed, the financial crash of 2008.
And that's when you had your real estate company.
We had our technology for real estate, for
Yeah, yeah.
builders and contractors, and we had a great private equity firm behind us from San Francisco, and we were trying to figure out which way was up. I mean, it was a hard time for us. And I remember Shauna also during that time, we were opening up our first restaurant at the exact same time. She was positive and crushing it and staying positive, and I'm miserable and trying to figure out my way out. And I don't know, during that time too, she was just a rock for me to say, it's okay if that all fails, you just come join me and you can make sandwiches with me. And ultimately we sold that business. It was still a success in its own right. And I still joined her, and I started making sandwiches with her. And so the rest is history.
Actually, one of my first experiences of someone else painting a picture of who Andrew Smith is I was at one of the Mercado meetings, and which they're amazing, by the way.
Yeah,
They're always
great.
really fun.
Yeah, they were so fun.
And I don't even know who I was talking to, but it was some business guy that seemed pretty awesome, and so I was picking his brain about a couple things, and
Smart thing to do.
and I remembered he went to Kneaders, and I wonder if you know this story or remember it, but I guess you were asking him like, hey, how was your experience at one of our locations? And he's like, it was great. They forgot like a cinnamon roll or something at the end.
Oh yeah.
Do you know this?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess then you guys split ways and whatever, and he comes home after some get together that you guys were all at, and he gets to his house, and his wife's like, hey, some guy in a Ferrari rolled up with like 20 cinnamon rolls and gave it to us. And so
I
like
did.
an instant solution provider of making everything better, and so that's when I was like, okay, Andrew's different. Also, before I ever met you, my first introduction to you was from my dad, and he's like, "Hey, you got to come meet Andrew. Just look for like one of the tallest guys here." And like I was doing something else. I was probably trying to get all the R&R food and all
Yeah.
that, And then you came into the room, and Andrew gets swarmed at these events because Andrew, just like that plant effect where everyone goes to the positivity. Everyone wants to be talking with Andrew. And so he's like, "Hey, come on, you got to come meet him." And I mean that's paid off where I get to call you a friend, and
Well, it's
uh
good to have friendship with you and your family too. I mean, your dad, your dad really had, when he was in his own right, in the middle of a room, he had the heliotropic effect, didn't he?
yeah.
He was smiley, he was charismatic, he was fun, he was funny. He wanted everybody to be part of the conversation. I mean, he was a uniter. I loved him.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I do remember when he passed, you sent me a really nice message that was super unexpected. I was like, "Wow, this guy's stellar."
Yeah.
And so I've always appreciated uh
Yeah, being part of the Did Dad Club is not a fun one to be part of. I lost my father. My birthday was last week, last week, and my father passed 2 days before my birthday. So every year, my birthday, I have to remember my father's passing. But he's been gone 18 years, Jackson.
mm,
And even 18 years later, it's still a tough day
yeah,
because there's that hole in your chest that nothing else can really fill, right? It's just
ever.
it's the hole in your chest. And I remember telling some of your brothers that too. It's like it's not going to fill up. It gets easier to cope with the fact that they're gone. It doesn't get easier to cope with the fact that their presence is no longer here. It sucks. It's
Yeah.
awful.
I I think of like a pretty heavy ball of weight that at the start it's just like so immense, and
It's so heavy.
it takes everything
Yep.
from you to just keep it up and just live with it.
Yep.
And then slowly you kind of get stronger, but it's like you are always
You're
holding
always
this.
carrying it. Yep.
And he's saying 18 years later, guys, like this isn't a thing that just happens and you move
No.
forward.
And it hits you at different times, doesn't it? Like
It's
just
so
the most
weird.
random times. I'm
Yeah.
sitting at a stoplight and I just think of a conversation I had with him, and then tears will be running down my
Yeah.
face. I'm like, what am I doing? He's been gone for that long. I'm an older guy. This is part of life that people pass, and we'll
Yeah.
see him later. And I'm excited to see my father again. I'm sure you're excited to see Mark. But at the end of the day, it's still such a weight to
Yeah.
carry. It sucks.
So
Let's not
for
be too drab here on your podcast,
no,
but
no, it's
gosh dang it, it's so hard.
yeah.
So hard.
What would be some advice that you'd give to someone that might be starting like a grief journey, or yeah, going through a family loss for the first time?
Yeah, I told so my partner, which I think you had her on here, Nicole Tanner, she lost her father too, and it was somewhat sudden. He was extremely healthy. Yours was extremely sudden. Mine was a little slower. We knew it was coming, but it still feels sudden when they take their last breath. It's awful, right? Um, and so Nicole had gone through that too, and I remember being at the funeral for her father up in Idaho, and we showed up and to support her. We love her, support her. She's our partner, and she just embraced me. I embraced her, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And there's nothing else I can say to you other than it's going to suck for a while. So just let the emotions flow. Like let them out. I don't think that us holding them in is the right thing to do. I think that, God blessed us with the strength and the power to get through the good and the bad. And so this is a bad time. Just let it go.
Hmm.
And so I tell anybody going through a grief journey, it's like you have to feel it, right? If you try to resist it or replace it or anything else like that, it's just going to be there forever. And I think that your analogy, Jackson, too, is weight. It's like you're carrying a weight. I think you're carrying multiple weights
Hmm.
if you don't let that go. So you got to kind of go through the grief of it. And so I say, let it go. And when you feel like you want to cry, cry. And if you want to talk about it, talk about it. Don't hold it in, just let it out, and it'll get easier to cope with.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid.
Is that how you kind of feel like, why am I holding this back? I should just feel it.
Yeah, well, my biggest thing that I was scared about was I thought of this analogy of like grief kind of needs to roll like a river, and then we ourselves dam it up, and there's gonna be a point where there's gonna be a crack in that dam, and I was so scared that whoever was in front
It's going to get it all.
would just get destroyed
Mhm.
by me not taking care of myself.
That's
And
right.
so I've always tried to think of every healthy, natural way to just go through the grief journey and try and find the lessons in it,
Yep.
try and find the positive, and as well, like embrace that it sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's horrible.
It's horrible. And I think that people that are going through the grief journey too, I think I told you when I sent it to you, I think it's gonna be hard for a while. It's gonna suck.
Yeah.
And to tell people too, I'm so sorry. There's nothing else you can say. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be awful for a while. I'm sorry. Like, good luck going through that journey. Because there's nothing else you can say.
Yeah.
But people trying to say, oh, it's gonna be fine, it'll be better, you'll see him again, all this. It's like, that didn't help me. It doesn't help for you to tell me that. I'm suffering right now. So yeah, I think the grief journey for everybody is gonna be a little different, but I would say feel it raw and let them out. And I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah.
But I love your idea about the dam, because we dam it up, and boy, you don't want to be in front of that dam when someone loses someone, because that's a spooky one.
And it's just inevitable too. And I don't know, people have different ways of going about it where they won't talk about it for 5-10 years, and it's like I can't see that being healthy interior, like inside of you.
No.
It's just
Well, and I think that having some sort of you have to have hope too, right?
Yeah.
Like when you go through it, it's painful. And we're talking about death of our fathers, but I would say anybody that has death or a major event in their life of loss, right? I mean, for some people, they could be their dog they had for 15 years. I've seen some people literally fall apart and go into deep depression over their passing of their dog or putting their dog down. And that's this very raw feelings, right? So just any grief, I just think that you have to have hope too. And I think that the hope for me, that I believe and I hope that I will see my father again, and I do truly believe I will, makes it a little easier to go through that grief journey.
definitely.
Have hope.
So yeah, what role has God played in your world of trials and triumphs?
I feel like it's such a lonely place to be a business owner, to sometimes be a father and a husband. Like, man, that's a lonely place sometimes. You feel like you got to be the tip of the spear to everything, right? You're the leader, you're the defender, you're the provider, you're the creator, you're all these things for your family and for your business and for everybody around you. And a lot of times I can feel lonely, like the pressure on us as men, and I think the pressure on women too is just the same, if not more immense than us as mothers. But we just put ourselves in a position where the weight of that can crush us, right? And I've felt that sometimes, that crushing power of maybe the adversity telling us that we're not good enough. And I believe that God, more than anything for me, has just made me feel like you're good enough for me at every stage, at every level. Just relax, be calm about it. This is just a blip in time. It doesn't matter what's going on today or what's going on in this moment, this month or 2 weeks or year, because it's really just a blip on the radar of your lifetime. And I've had to get that perspective in my head very clear, that God is with me. He is there. He has a plan. I think that you've probably heard the statement that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan. I don't ever tell him what I'm going to, like, this is my plan because this is going to work out perfectly. I just don't do that anymore. I just think I'm going to kind of go with it, know he's there, and do my best to listen.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that God has been a good partner for me because I feel not alone at any point, any stage. I think two people feel like he's just like a cloud, right? He's a mysterious cloud. And it's crazy. People think maybe I'm nuts, but I could be sitting at a stoplight and just be thinking about something that I have to deal with or I need some direction on. And I will talk out loud to him and just say, what do I do here? Like, he's there. Why do we have to make it seem like it's something that we have to get all cloaked up and go kneel at an altar or something like that? He's not. He's our power that we can go to, and he's our brother and our father. So why would we not go to both of them?
Yeah. Well, I just like to think of a perfect dad that wants to be as involved in your life as you'll let him.
That's right.
And I also want to hit on confidence here in a sec, because for me, everything that I've been achieving or going for, and like setting big goals and things like that, I have all the confidence in the world because I know that my main board advisor is like all powerful and can get me through whatever. And I love those conversations in the car where it's like, okay, I don't know what the freak to do right here, but can you send me a little insight? And there's so much power to it. If you were insane or not, at the end of the day, like,
Doesn't matter.
it's great.
It's
Yeah.
so good to have the refreshing feeling of that you're just not alone.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing
Yeah.
is you're not alone.
And yeah, something that's changed me. There's a promise in the Bible and in the Book of Mormon. It's my favorite one of Jesus. He's essentially talking about like, don't worry about what to eat or what to drink or what to wear, and like essentially saying like all the issues that you could possibly going through, God knows you're going through these things, and then his ask is put God and his righteousness first, and all these things will be given unto you. And
So good.
so as long as my interpretation of it is, as long as we're progressing and trying to put God first, like life will be a lot easier.
A lot easier.
And then you can see risk and you can be like, I can take that on.
Oh yeah.
I just want to keep God present in my life as much as I can, and he'll help fill these little gaps where I'm inadequate and I still have room to grow.
Yep.
And I think that's been powerful.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the apostles when he came out and said, we overcomplicate the gospel, we overcomplicate the scriptures, we overcomplicate religion. It was Uchtdorf, and he said, the two laws that the Lord expects out of us is to love God and to love your neighbor. And he leaves it at those two things. He goes, if you do those two things, you're going to be in good standing with your Heavenly Father. And in my mind, I'm like, God, that's so easy. Like, why do we overcomplicate things in our heads? Like, but when he says that, it's actually more in depth when he says that than anything. And that is love God, meaning include them. If you love someone, you're going to include them, right? And you're going to respect them and you're going to lean on them. So love him by including him, relying on him, communicating with him, living in accordance with what he would want you to do, right? So that's loving him. And then love your neighbor, respect them, help them, encourage them, celebrate wins for them. Don't compete with them. Want everybody to succeed. That's loving your neighbor. So in my mind, those two things make you feel a lot better.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, next thing, I like these little sectors that you broke up, like this process, which you went into, like some people might have gone into like, okay, to push cells here, but you're building a human in a good emotional state and the proper pillars of that. And so I was a troubled youth counselor in the wilderness in Arizona at one point in my life.
Yeah. What was that one called?
It's Anasazi.
Anasazi. I've heard of that one before.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which it was a very God-sent thing. I was not planning on doing it after my mission. I had all these rules of like any type of work, I'd have to get paid X, Y,
Of
Z,
course.
and it's like
The natural man came out.
Yep,
This is what I got to get.
and so of course that plan, God's like, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, funny.
And that was when I learned that I would go in and I'd be dealing with troubled youth, and I would just give them all 100% trust, like what we were talking about. And I learned as I do that, my relationships, when you give a relationship 100% trust, one, you might get burned every once in a while, but I would way rather get burned every once in a while than not give 100% to anything
sure.
I'm trying to do. And specifically in a relationship, like where, it's like, oh, I don't want regrets later because I held back out of trust insecurities. And so I think that's a really cool point in business and in life, is to give that trust and then, yeah, take it back if it's not being, reciprocated, or if it's being abused. No human needs to get walked on. I don't think.
Love that, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that you were a counselor of that, because you probably saw a lot too, right? You saw people that were broken, busted for a lot of different reasons.
Well, it was so interesting because their identity, their whole life is they are a bad person because
right.
they've done a couple bad things in society's eyes, right?
That's right.
And
there's no coming back. That's what they think.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
And so we would focus on we'd call it their seeds of greatness. And so our whole job was to find what they're great at, what their gifts are, and bring those out. And we saw these kids that were nothing to themselves because everyone else has told them they are nothing. And then they become these leaders because they they have been validated in the light for the first time in their life. And I think a ton of those rehab type centers are horrible. Their success rates are less than 10, you know. But Anasazi was one of the just ones that were successful,
Yeah.
and they had really great.
I think it's great that they have it. There's some around here. There's one that we've donated to called Bridle Up Hope, which my
Yeah,
wife and I, we're horsemen. So we ride horses every week.
yeah.
Sean
I have
and
some
I.
friends there.
And Bridle Up Hope is amazing because it does the same thing. It's that you take these girls that are having these issues and you put them up on a horse, and it's amazing when you get up on the back of a horse how your all your worldly issues, they kind of just drain off of you. It's weird because it does that for me with when we ride our horses. But things like that where you just get people to realize their true potential, love that. I
Yeah.
think it's such a great program to have across the board. We need more of them is what we need.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Trust is just key.
Yeah.
Like, in the amount of trust that God gives on each of us to make our own mistakes, and just like what you were talking about, where you're like, I want to take all the problems and things away from my kids, whatever, but you trust them to go through it too. It's pretty special.
It's hard though so you think about the tough times we go through in our lives. You've asked me a couple times now throughout this, like when has been a hard time.
Yeah.
When someone's going through a hard time though, I would just suggest everybody never saying, but imagine all the things you're learning. Like
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear that, right? But when they're going through it, on the outside of, like as a father, when I see my kids going through it, my son right now on a mission, going through a tough time with a tough situation. And I'm talking to him, saying, I'm so sorry, and here's some ideas of how to get through it, and you're going to be great, and I know you have the power to get through this. But I don't tell them, but imagine all the great things you're learning. Because when they're going through it, it's painful for them. And you can't see a way out, and you can't see positive things when you're in a tough situation.
Mm.
So for me, I'm always like, when someone has gone through it and they're already on the backside of it, try to lay out all the things that they have experienced and try to pick out the positives out of it and all the things that you learned, but only after. Don't do it during. That's what I
Yeah.
would just suggest. Because nobody likes to be told when they're going through it, you'll be fine because of all the things that you're going to learn. It's like, no, I'm suffering right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think in any high emotional moment, that's typically not the time to like
No.
correct or do a big teaching moment, right?
No, it's after, right? And
Yeah.
and listen, I believe too. This is the thing is surprising to me is people forget. We are in cycle after cycle in our lives, and good times, when there are good times, people for some reason always think, well, things are great. Business is great. My relationships are great. My wife and I get along great, or my husband and I get along great, and it's always going to be this way. Like, who are we to say what the future is always going to be? And what we don't realize is good times pass because challenges come to all of us. There's not one person on the earth that's not going to have a tough challenge sooner or later, right?
Yeah.
And then when challenges are here, I always tell people this too shall pass. This will pass you because good times are on the horizon always, because there's always cycles. But when you get into a good vein, like I'm in this real successful vein right now in my career. I'm ready already mentally and emotionally for the next set of challenges because I know they're coming. That's just part of what the world is. And the Lord wants to keep putting us through challenge after challenge to continue to help us grow. That's the only way we grow. So just don't kid yourself that, success begets success. I think people always think that, like, well, because I've had success, I will always just keep having success. That's just not true.
Yeah.
Success sometimes is the result of failure after failure after failure.
I think failure is like the
And
biggest.
then success,
Yeah.
right?
Failure is like the biggest stepping stone to success. Those trials, those moments where you're in the depths, like those are the learnings that make
Propel you.
it possible
Yeah.
for success. And I think like that's part of the plan here
It
is
is.
that we got to go through that because the success is going to be so much greater, and we'll be able to be so much more through the hardship that we've gone through.
Yeah, you talk to founders or entrepreneurs or business owners or executives that had to get a exit with a business outcome. I think that you sit down with any of them and say, did you ever have any struggles during that? And everybody just laughs like, yeah. We almost went out of business 3 times. We
Yeah.
almost, we almost got took over. I had a coup in my business. I had to fire half of my staff and then rehire, and we had to pivot our product makeup. I mean, everyone has had failure after failure. I
Yeah.
mean, you said at the beginning of this when we were talking about your father, and your father was extremely successful in his own right too. You said, what was the term? He was like, he got smashed like multiple times.
Yeah.
Everyone has those stories. If you're going to be in the vein of being a business owner, you're gonna get smashed.
Yeah.
Your fingers are gonna get burned along the way.
Something interesting, and I, in my business, we capture the lives and legacies of people's loved ones. Imagine like a Netflix series documentary about your life or your parents' life, and that's what we capture. And looking back on my father's stories, the times where he kind of got smashed or
Mm-hmm.
like got hit hard in '08, he built his dream house and he had 24 hours to figure out like a large sum of money or the house was gone.
Yep.
And I learned that like 5 or 10 years later, and I'm like, that's the coolest thing I've heard ever. Like
That's a
that's
great story.
yeah. Or
I'm sure he was not thinking it was great that day, right?
yeah, that day. Exactly. In the moment, it's like, okay,
Oh,
shut
yeah.
up. This
Yeah,
is not
this is hard.
yeah. But yeah, it was really cool because then I've talked with some of his friends where he's like, there's about 7 or 8 guys that were in your dad's position, and he was like one of the only ones that like made it back,
Yep.
came back, and like those are the things that empower me. And so as people share their story, I think it's so important to not just shed light on all the light, like get into the darkness, and because that's what makes the light so
So much
bright.
brighter. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Love that.
And so that's just been a fun new perspective, and that's why I like to go there because I think there's so much more learning in the failures and the suck that than just going naming each win that's happened.
Yeah, like you say, the suck, because I always tell my boys, just embrace the suck. When it
Yeah.
sucks, just embrace it, learn
Mm.
from it, bounce back,
Yeah.
embrace the suck.
Mm. And I want to be conscious of your time and everything, and this has been
You've been amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you're so fun to talk with. What's kind of the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I'm getting to the point where I'm on kind of the downhill slope of my career, right? I'm not starting. I
Yeah.
started a long time ago, and I've got several years more into me. And so I want to leave a legacy of hard work to the people around me to see how much it takes to do what I've done. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of persistence and dedication and loyalty just the job, to the execution of a plan. But hard work, I want to leave a legacy of hard work so people know that that's what it takes. I really want to leave a legacy to the younger generation, of opportunity, and to take opportunity and seize opportunity when you have it in front of you. And so I'm really cognizant right now within Savory. We have a lot of companies. We have a lot of people.
How many companies
We have
are
11 companies right now, about 17,000 employees currently. And we've had at the height
so
of
it's kind of
everything.
a startup.
Yeah, sort of a startup.
I'm just kidding.
No, it's, $1 billion of assets under management. It's gotten much bigger than I ever initially started it. When we started it, Sean and I, we didn't start and say, we're going to go do X. It's been kind of a moonshot after a moonshot, like, oh, this has worked out, let's go a little bit more. And then, well, we have more to give and more opportunity to create, so let's go a little bit bigger. And 16 years later, we look back and go, geesh, this is a lot more and bigger than we ever thought it was going to be. But it wasn't one of those things where it's like, this is what we're going to be in 16 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But for both of us now, we're thinking a lot about just the next generation. And so how do we leave things better than where we started? How do we give them the tools and the abilities to keep it going? And then for them to continue the legacy of job creation in a wholesome, great environment. Because I think there's a lot of businesses out there. We hire executives sometimes out of businesses. I sit down with them and I just say, how was it working there? And what did you learn and everything else? And it's incredible to me to see how many broken environments there are where people work in these extremely difficult, kind of demoralizing environments. And I think there's more of those than we think. And so the legacy I want to leave is you can actually create great working environments where people feel safe, they feel heard, They feel like they have an upward opportunity of mobility to provide for their families, that they don't have to go anywhere. I want to leave a legacy of business opportunities around me that have those as the environment. And then the team around me will continue to grow those types of opportunities further.
Hmm. I I want to get your thought on this. To push someone to their excellence, like to their best as a leader, what are some of the best ways to do that? To one, help everyone in the company, you know, progressing within themselves and like teaching them how to work harder and hit these goals that are aspirational, and how do you instill that in them where it's like, hey, like come on, like I know you can work harder or
Yeah.
things like that. Like how do you go about those?
Yeah. So the first thing that you have to do with every human is you have to give them the opportunity,
Mm.
right? You can't talk about it. You can't read books about it. You can't keep promising it to them and then not do it. You can't be the guy or the girl all the time, right? And so I think that one of the things that you would hear from all the people that have worked around with me that are my executives that have worked with me for 15 years, like we have very little attrition around me. We have little attrition. We have zero attrition from VP, C-suite and above. Like nobody's left for 13 to 15 years.
Mm.
And I think one of the reasons is because they continue to grow themselves. And the way that I help them grow is everyone knows that if you're going to work around Andrew, you got to be ready, because we'll go into a meeting and I'll say, Jackson, you're going to be the one that leads this meeting out with these people. You'd be like, what? Like, yeah. So be ready tomorrow at 9:00. And I give you the platform and the opportunity to go in there and learn from experience.
Mm.
And I think that what you have to do as a leader or as just a human with other humans is give them some leash to do it their way. And I always say 85% is 100. 85% good enough for me is 100%.
Mm.
Because if everybody thinks it has to be 100% my 100%, those people will never prevail, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give them an opportunity to fail. You have to give them an opportunity to come short. And I probably give people too much leash, right, to let them hang themselves. But I give a lot of people opportunity. So
Love that.
if you work around me, you are going to be put right in the bullseye of opportunity, whether you're ready or not, because that's the only way you're going to be ready.
Mm. Love that. That's cool. I like
Be
that a
careful
lot.
what you wish for if you work with me. When I say that, it's like it's not a scary or a bad thing. It's
High
if you want
standards.
opportunity, be ready for it then, because
Yeah.
I will give it to you. And when you're taken, I don't expect perfection. I expect you to give your best effort though.
Yeah.
And when people are not, I think it's really important to be honest with them, right? I think nobody can ever grow. I think the feedback is important, but I think kind feedback is
Yeah.
important. I can be very upset with how someone has showed up or how someone has performed, and I can be angry with them, but I don't have to show that anger, right? I
Yeah.
think that just being direct and saying, Jackson, you're better than this, man, and doing it in a positive way is just as effective, if not more effective, than any other way you can do it. Just do it with love and care. But if you're just a complete jerk, they're not going to grow. So what are you
Yeah.
trying to really accomplish? Help them grow or help them know that you're the boss? Because
Mm.
who cares? They already know you're the
Yeah.
boss. So in my mind, it's being direct and kind. Doesn't mean that I'm never upset or frustrated with someone's outcome of what they've done, because I know they're better than that. And I know that they have more to give or to push. So then constant feedback is important.
Mm. I like that. Yeah. Um, just like that's the next part of keeping positive, like staying positive. I've seen that's been something that's played such a large role into my world, and the things that people go through. It's like you can be a victim to your circumstances, or you can find the lessons, like what you're talking about. What's your thoughts on helping other people have more positive perspective? And then we'll wrap up after this
Yeah, I
too.
think the positive, I tell people several times, I'm always like this. Like, you're not going to find me in a different mode than this right now. Never. I only know one mode, and that is I will be kind, I will be positive, I will take time, and I'll take a moment to talk to anybody, even if I'm in a hurry, because I care about people. You have to actually like humans to do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're just a me monger and all you care about is yourself and your progress and your success, people are going to feel that. They're going to tell that when they're around you. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like I don't have time for them. I don't only have 24 hours in a day, and I have to sleep some of them, but so I don't have unlimited amounts of time. But I do want to use my time to help as many people as I can. And so, I don't know. In my mind, I think that being positive is fairly easy for me because I'm a positive person. But I've told people before, I'll be in my office, it's a closed door conversation I'm having with someone, and it could be the worst set of news, right, Jackson? It's not good news. I just feel like I got kicked in the teeth, and I'm like, gosh, dang it. Why did that just happen? And what am I going to do? And that's going to set us back. And I've had that happen in my career many, many times. You would not know I had that call because when I opened that office door and I walk down the hallway and I see my other coworkers and partners and stuff, I smile and say, how you doing, Jackson? You would have no idea I just had the worst news. And it's because they will not know. They'll overreact to how I act because I'm the leader. And if the leader's panicking, what do you think? Everybody's going to augment that by 10 times and say, well, Jackson's panicking. He's my boss. That means I have to be really concerned.
Yeah.
And I know that. And so some people could say, well, you're acting. Absolutely, I am. 100%. Because guess what? I'm going to act the way that I want to feel. And sooner or later, you're going to feel it. So if you just act positive, you'll start feeling more positive. But if you want to go sit in the corner and be pissed off and have a bad attitude or whatever, what do you think you're going to feel like? Bad. So act like you want to feel. And so for me, maybe some days it is an act. But I know the other people around me, I'm going to affect them if I'm not positive. And so for me, I muster all the strength I can to stay positive and consistent. I think people want consistency in their lives. And if you're a leader, you have to be consistent. You can't come in one day and be happy and the next day come in and be a freaking tyrant, right? You just can't.
Yeah.
Because if you and I work together and you saw that every day, well, which Andrew do I get today?
Yeah.
It's exhausting, isn't it? And you don't feel like you have stability in the way you feel. So consistency and positivity, they go hand in hand. And in my mind, if you don't feel that way every day, act it. And if you act it, you'll feel it. I promise.
That's a gem right there. That's great insight, sincerely. Is there anything you feel like you want to let our audience know before we wrap up?
Yeah, thinking that I might know what your audience is on here for and looking for, I would tell everybody because I feel like every time I talk to a young entrepreneur, couples that are asking me for financial advice, because I wish there was more couple advice on finances. I do. I just don't think you get it in college anymore. And people come and say, can you give us some advice on how to save? And should I finance this or should I buy that cash? So I'm always helping all of them, as many as I can. But I always tell people the same thing, and that is don't skip steps. Don't skip steps, and don't try to skip steps because it doesn't work. There's a reason you have to take the next step right in front of you. Don't try to leap 5 of them ahead of you and think that that's going to be good for you. You have to take all of them because if you leap steps, you're going to miss some really important life skills, learning experiences that are going to make you ready for the steps further ahead. So don't skip steps. And slow down and be patient, because patience it's tough for all of us. We all want it now. I want gratification now. I want that new car now. I want success now. I want the hot girlfriend now. I want the hot boyfriend now. Everybody wants things now. But I just think pause, perfect your life on a daily basis, and just go along the journey at a pace that makes sense. Don't get caught for speeding. You don't want to go too fast, right? So just don't skip steps either.
I don't believe you haven't got caught speeding.
I have in a car been caught speeding. And I've been caught speeding in business too. And that's why I tell other people that's a tough one, Jackson, to get caught for speeding. And you know what I'm saying, Mike?
Yeah.
You're going too fast, and then you're like, oh my gosh, we overgrew, we overspent, we overhired, because you're going too fast.
Back.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say don't get caught for speeding, but also don't get caught for speeding in your car. It's dangerous.
Hey, speaking of that, I've always wanted to go to the racetrack, and that's something
we have to
should
do that. Yeah. I used to rent out the racetrack every year for several years and take the office, and we would go do hot laps in my race cars around the track. And they always were like, that is the funnest experience ever. So we got to go do that, Jackson.
I'd love to.
Got to get your family, my boys, we'll all go out together, rent the track.
There we go.
Let's do it.
Well, Andrew, it's been a complete pleasure. And that's one you'll have to rewatch and take some notes on. Andrew, you're amazing. Thanks for all your inspired thoughts. And I loved how this podcast went just kind of all over the place, but it was,
why not?
I think it was special because I feel like there's a lot of podcasts out there of you that kind of takes your business journey, but I feel like today we got to know who Andrew Smith is, and like that's what I wanted everyone to
Yeah, I
see.
enjoyed it. I mean, everybody can hear what my business experiences are, and it's been fun. It's been a fun journey, but no, this is definitely raw who I am. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you pulling that out.
Well, thanks for joining, and as always, I love you guys a lot, and thanks for all the support. And that's a podcast.